Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Everyone ready? Okay, good. Hopefully, everyone had a good first day of class. So let me tell you a story first. So I was at the orientation last week. Ever remember the 1L orientation? When you first come in, you have absolutely no idea what to do. So I always tell a story at orientation for the students at ease. And it's a true story, I promise. So this is a story from my very first day of law school, way back when, right? So I remember distinctly, my first class was contracts. And probably like you get your syllabus, a few weeks in advance, and there's probably two books you have to buy. There's a case book, right? And the restatement, right? The restatement of contracts. Okay. So my professor's syllabus wasn't very good. And, for the first day of class, it just said read pages 1 through 25. It didn't say which book you're supposed to read from, right? Obviously, he meant the case book, this in hindsight, but I didn't really know any lawyers. I had no idea. So I read the first 25 pages of the restatement. I read none of the cases we had assigned for that day. Some case about a horse, I don't know, whatever it was, right? I didn't read any of the cases for the first day of class. And I remember walking into the class, looking around going, uh-oh, because I see everyone has the case book open, and no one even has your statement book in their bag. I'm like, okay, this is not good. So then I send this frantic email to the professor. We like 15 minutes for a class saying, and I have it saved, like, Professor, I accidentally read the wrong chapter and the wrong book. He never bothered replying. So I'm thinking there, okay, great. My law school career is off to a colossal failure. My very first day, I couldn't read the damn book correctly, right? I knew what I was doing. But then we go through class, and we're going, and we're going. He starts asking questions about a horse. I have no idea what the heck he's – this is a case about selling a horse. You probably read the case too. And at one point, he asked, okay, so what are the elements of a contract? Whoa, okay. So at this point, if you just read the case, I mean, maybe you could put it together, but probably not. But I'm like, okay, I got this, because I had read the restatement, which lists 1, 2, 3, 4, offer, acceptance, formation, right? I had it. And I raised my hand and said, okay, here's the answer. And he said, what are the elements? Like, okay, here are the 4 elements. And he said, Mr. Blackman, that's correct. How did you know that? I'm like, well, I read the restatement. He's like, why? But he flipped through his book. He's like, well, that's correct. I even gave him line and verse what section number it was in. And then I said to myself, you know what? Okay, I can figure out this law school deal, right? So I always tell this story to law students to put them at ease about the first day of the first year of law school, right? But that doesn't hold on the first day of your second year of law school. Okay, so a number of you after class said you didn't get an email or an announcement about class. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. It doesn't really matter. But by the second year of law school, you should know there's an assignment for the first day of class. And if for whatever reason you didn't get it, email me, email a friend. In fact, several of you emailed me in advance saying, what's the reading? It's not an excuse that you didn't know what the assignment was the first day, because you know who I am. You knew where to show up. So you should have known there was a reading for the first day. Law school is about professionalism, right? It's not just about foxes and easements and adverse possession. It's about learning to build reputation, right? So this is your second year of law school. You've had, 30 credits under your belt. Okay, so that's not an excuse. I would hope in the event that you ever have a court hearing and for whatever reason the court email didn't go through and you say, Your Honor, I didn't get the email, they'll say too damn bad. You just waived your client's claim, right? If you didn't file something on the right date because you didn't get the email or it filtered or whatever, and you didn't inquire if you were expecting something, your client lost, and then you get a malpractice claim. All right, so I'm not yelling at anyone in particular. In fact, there were several of you who had the same problem. But don't let it happen again. You know how law school works, right? You're not the gullible 1L that I was. You're now second year law students, right? You're on your way. You're halfway, almost halfway there. And God willing, in 2 years, you all pass the bar. Brenda? Okay, very good. So we're going to continue our discussion to adverse possession. And as you can see, I have fortunately, the projector set up correctly. So now that I can actually have the computer working right, I'm going to show you the class blog, which I want to do the last class, but the thing was all screwed up. Okay, so for the rest of the semester, we're going to be on schedule. Okay, I've been doing this for some time now, and I'm always right on schedule. This is not read 30 pages ahead. It's read what I say for that day, and we'll finish what we're supposed to finish. Okay. If you ever get lost, just go to joshblackman.com. It's a little small, but the link for classes, you'll find the link for Prop2. And when you click that, this is a page that will come up. Again, it's a little small, but the first link you'll see, I'll make it bigger. The first link you'll see says syllabus. Whoa, way too big. Syllabus. You click the syllabus right there. Okay. Once you go to the syllabus, you will see everything you need for the entire semester in one page. Information about the exam. I've posted every exam I've ever given and the A+ answer for every exam I've ever given. Okay? People ask me at the exam, go take a look at that. I also, as I mentioned last time, record all my lectures on YouTube. If you want to see lectures from past years, click those links. If you want to see from this year, just go to the YouTube channel. So basically, immediately after class, the video is posted, like that same night, whenever I get around to it. Basically, the same day that I record it, you can watch it. So for whatever reason you're sick, you have a mock trial competition, watch it. But again, I take attendance, so it doesn't serve you well to skip class. Okay? I've mapped out every reading for the entire semester, so you can budget accordingly. I don't fall behind, so make sure you know what's expected of you and you're reading it. Okay. Going back to the class blog, every day around 7 a.m. that you have class, I'm going to post a new post, and it will basically say, here's what we're covering today, and here's some interesting things. I have pictures about the place we're having discussion. This is a diagram for the Howard v. Kunto case we'll be discussing in a couple minutes. If it's relevant, we're talking about some law. I'll talk, here's the Texas statute involving tacking. We'll discuss that. You can click onto it so you're familiar with that. Pictures of George O'Keeffe, whatever, right? I will also have a link here. Actually, again, it's probably too small for you to see, but it says lecture notes. If you click that, what will come up is this document. Okay, I'll be typing up here. So if you don't have a computer, it's fine. You don't need one. Anything I type, you can see up here. But if you click that link, a Google Doc will pop up, and you'll see whatever I'm typing. This way, you don't need to frantically write down everything I'm saying. You can just copy and paste it later. Right? I don't want you to. Now, the purpose of this is not to basically type out the entire semester. The purpose of this is instead of using the board. I don't like writing. It's not very useful for me. So I will use this as a way to share things like, so what are the 4 elements of adverse possession? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Maybe there's a question involving numbers, and law students hate numbers. So I'll put some of the numbers up there so we can keep track in our head. These are not meant to be class notes. I promise I will make typos. I promise you, because I'll be typing very quickly in real time. And then if you click on that link, you'll see it on your screens. Many students find this effective. Some don't, whatever you want. Look, you can't type there, only I can. In other words, you can view this, but you can't edit it, which is for my protection mostly, and your protection for your sensibilities. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say about that for now. Any questions or things on your mind? Yes, sir.
So I think you said this already, but whatever you're putting up there will be preserved, so we can go back and access
forever and ever, and until infinity beyond, forever. Yeah, fee simple, forever. Okay. So remember that from last year, right? There's a couple of fee simples this year, I promise. Just like a few, you have to slightly remember, but not much. Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. All right. So I always like to start off by reviewing where we finished last class to provide some continuity. And let's just start there again because we didn't quite finish it. Is that Greg?
Yeah.
What's up? Okay, Greg. So let's start where we finished last week and run for me, please, the 4 elements we have of adverse possession, please.
Entry, open, and notorious.
Okay, 1 second. So I can write them out. Okay, so you have entry. Okay, what's the second one?
Open and notorious.
Open and notorious. Okay, good. What's the third?
Continuous.
Number 3 is continuous. Okay, what's number 4?
And claim of right.
Okay. All right, now the harder one. What? Let's explain the first one. What's entry?
You actually enter the land.
Yeah, and why is entry important? Yes, entry, actually entering onto the land, starts the clock, right? That is a symbol to the world that I am now on the piece of land. I can't say, oh, I want to adverse possess Blackacre over there, but I don't want to go there. It's too cold, right? No, you have to actually enter. Okay? Is that Chase, next one?
Yes, sir.
Chase, what does it mean to be open and notorious?
You're not hiding from the person who has title of the land. You're
Very good.
Conspicuously.
Yeah, conspicuous is a perfect synonym for notorious. Open and notorious means you're on the land in a manner that the true owner should know about, right? And we discussed different examples, right? So if you're inside of a house, right, maybe Mr. Robinson's really quiet. He closes all the windows, right, and doesn't show anyone. But what did he do? He filed the paperwork with the court. Remember that little affidavit? And that was a public record putting on notice openly to the bank that he was now squatting in that home. And as a property owner, you have an obligation to check public records, right? That was a sufficient act. Mr. Robinson did a lot of things wrong, but that one was actually correct. Okay? Now, is that Tyler next up? Tyler, this is the easy one, right? What's continuous?
It's an ordinary use. It could be something that you go to or you use it all the time, or what we'll see today, summertime use.
Very good. Yeah. Continuous means you have to be there for some period of time, right? Every state is different. So I think I mentioned this briefly last class, but in Texas, generally it's 10 years, right? If you want to squat on a piece of land in Texas, 10 years. There's an exception to that, though. Okay. So is that Will?
Yes.
Will, do you remember what color of title is?
It's some sort of
Exactly. Right. So here's a classic example of color of title, right? I'm a crook, and I promise you, in every single exam question, there'll be a crook. I'm a crook. I pretend to sell you Blackacre. I give you a fraudulent deed that I scribbled up in my garage, right? You're a smart guy. If you think, oh, Josh is honest, I'll take his word for it, right? I give you this fraudulent deed, and you're on there for 3 years in Texas. The true owner comes back and says, hey, wait a minute, scram. You say, no, wait a minute. I don't have to wait 10 years. I have to wait only 3 years because I adversely possess with color of title. Okay? So generally speaking, the full period of adverse possession in Texas is 10 years. But if you have some sort of piece of paper or color of title, you only need 3 years. And it makes sense, right? We don't want to punish someone who's relying on some sort of deed that, looked okay in its face, but turned out to be fraudulent. Okay? Now, the reason why I put color of title inside the parentheses of claim of right is because they overlap. Okay? In the back, is that Aman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Aman. What does claim of right mean?
Like different jurisdictions, they use like different standards for
That's absolutely correct. But generally speaking, what does claim of right mean? Just broadly speaking. You're correct, but how is
parties like thinking like at the time when we process that possession of that.
Yeah, the claim of right, and it's a terrible phrase, means what's my claim to the land, right? Why do I think I own it, right? Or why do I think it's mine? So I put this in parentheses. If you have a fraudulent deed, that's your claim of right, right? Your claim of right is, here I have this deed. I mean, it turns out to be a piece of garbage. Yeah? Exactly. So what happens if you don't have a piece of paper, right? What happens if, in the example we did in the class last time, we build a staircase that goes 15 inches over the borderline? Is that Josh in the back? Josh, in that case, you have a piece of paper or any kind of color of title? So how do we infer what your claim of right is? By looking at your state of mind. Everyone see that? When you don't have a piece of paper, when you can't go on the 3-year limit, you go to the 10-year limit, and then we have to ascertain your state of mind. Is it objective or good faith? But I want to make this easier for you. In virtually every state, they've eliminated the state of mind inquiry. I mean, it's not all, but it's pretty much every state. So in almost every case, it's objective. Your state of mind doesn't matter. So, and so is your name on the chart? I don't know if your name's on the chart. What's your name?
Omar Martinez.
Omar. Okay. Omar, let me ask you this question, Omar. what happens if you have no state of mind? How do we know that you have a claim to the land? If we don't know what's in your head, how do we infer what your claim to the land is?
Just by the changes that you've done to the property.
Good. Okay, let me, you're actually on the right track. Let me ask this question differently. If we don't know what's going on in your head, what's the best indication of what you think if we can't see inside your head? Let me ask this question, Omar, like this, right? Say you're on a piece of land, right? I don't know why you're there. What do I know for sure? That you're there. When you don't know what's in someone's head, you look at their actions, right? So when you eliminate the state of mind, the mere fact that Omar is in this house and he's saying that for 3 years or 10 years, whatever, that is a claim of right, that you're actually there. So a lot of the cases discuss the state of mind. I really don't want you to dwell on that because basically every court was eliminating it because it doesn't really, it's very hard to apply. So the fact that Omar's squatting, that's his claim of right. So effectively the fourth element is automatic, right? It's effectively automatic. If you're squatting, that's your claim of right. That's why I don't want you to dwell. It doesn't really matter. The only difference is if you have color of title, you get 3 years. And if you don't have that piece of paper, you're at a decade. All right, any questions on that? This is just review, but I'll provide a little probably finer point on it. Any questions on this? No? Okay, let's move on. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I'm just clarifying, 3 years if you have a fraudulent deed.
If you just say color of title, yes. If you have color of title, which could be a fraudulent deed, it could be a foreclosure sale that wasn't executed properly. There are a lot of different reasons why you have that piece of paper. It's not
some piece of paper that
something of record, yes. Something tangible.
Okay. So you have to have it for 3 years.
Well, you need to squat for 3 years, openly, notoriously,
Mm-hmm.
and if the owner doesn't kick you out in 3 years, you've now gained up adverse possession.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? All right. So the first case we have for today is a very tricky one. And the facts of this case are maddening, right? So this is a fundamental idea. In property, we talk not about houses, but about land. And this case proves that. You could very well own a piece of property and your house can be somewhere else because of a screwed up survey. All right. So, Amanda, is that Jimena? Jimena, what's a survey? What does that mean? Right. So if you live, in a city, right? You can say, okay, I live, on, the corner of, Richmond and Shepherd, whatever, right? You know where that intersection is. You can say I'm the third house from the corner of Richmond and Shepherd, right? You can name an intersection, right? It's fairly easy. But what if you're talking about someplace in nature? And there's a place called the Hood Canal. And I put this picture up there. Do you see how jagged these borders are? How it kind of winds throughout the water? There are no streets there, right? There's no intersection. There's no grid. So how do you associate what piece of land you own in a very imprecise art called surveying? So basically, say there's a big rock here. You say 50 feet from that big rock till 70 feet from that big tree. I'm not joking you, right? If you go back and you read very old deeds, that's how things are identified, by lakes, by rivers, by trees, by rocks. Okay. This isn't very accurate for the reasons we'll see in this case, right? And I got a nicer picture than the one in your book, right? The reason why it's not very accurate is that what happens if someone screws up? Right? What happens if lot A is actually here, but someone thinks lot A is there? And then people start building their houses based on an incorrect location of their home. Well, that creates significant problems, right? Because basically everyone's house is on the wrong spot. So this case illustrates, first of all, why surveying is very difficult, but also why adverse possession exists to soften the blow of screwed up surveys. All right, so let's try the facts of this case. I mean, the chronology here is a little bit tricky, but I want to make sure you guys get it closely. Is that Michelle? Michelle, what were the sequence of events here? How did this block on the Hood Canal get so messed up?
Well, so the Howlands and the Kunto, is that
Kunto's better, yeah.
okay. Each lot was adjacent to each other, and the Kuntos had someone come and survey their land because they wanted to make improvements on it, and the surveyor did an incorrect survey, and so that resulted in each deed being off by the adjacent lot right next to it. So all of the house owners, their deeds didn't match what lots they're actually.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty good. So what effectively happened here is this, okay? At some point a long time ago, a survey was performed that marked off all of the different boundaries on this property. And that surveyor screwed up. And as a result, everyone was off by 50 feet. Several decades later, another survey was performed, okay? And this time, the survey said, we got a problem here. So I'm going to try and walk you through this diagram. Your book has a slightly different diagram. I find more complicated. This diagram is a little bit easier to follow. So there are basically 3 lots and 2 houses. Okay? The Kuntos live over here. Okay, this is their house. It's on lot B. But their deed is to lot A. So you see the problem. The land described for the Kuntos is lot A, but their house is on lot B. Everyone with me so far? If you don't, stop me, okay? Okay, but who owns lot B? The Moyers. The Moyers own lot B. But where is the Moyers' house? There should be a C here. Pretend there's a C here. On lot C. Okay? So here's the problem. The Kuntos live on land owned by the Moyers, and the Moyers live on land owned by Howard. Everyone see this, right? So Moyers is like, uh-oh, right? Howard owns my land. I want to keep my house where it is. Right? So is that Natasha? So what's the deal between Howard and Moyer to try and make this make sense?
Well, Howard, after discovering that his wife expanded his lot, asked Moyer to convey his portion of it, and he did so, as well as the title.
What did Moyers and Howard effectively do?
Howard purchased Moyer's land,
Okay.
which he was living on, and in addition to his area, so now he owns.
What did they do? You said it right, but effectively, what did Howards and Moyers do? Just say it. They swapped. You said it. They effectively swapped. Right? The opinion could have just said it, but they didn't. Howard owned C. Okay? That's where the Moyers' house was. Right? So Howard gave to Moyer the land that his house was on. I'll say it again. Howard gave to Moyer the land his house was on. Okay? And what did Howard get in return? This is where it gets a little bit of a jerk stuff, right? Howard gets the land where Kunto's house is on. Everyone follow me, right? So Moyer's good, right? He's happy. He owns the house. He owns the land. Everything's cool. But Howard now owns the land where Kunto is. Everyone see that? So then what's the problem? Is that Peter? Peter, then what's the problem if Kunto's house is on Howard's land? Why is that a problem? He does, well, they claim you don't own it. So imagine if you're Howard, right? Howard was in an interesting spot because he didn't have a house, but he basically gave the switch to Moyer and then went to Kunto. He's like, get out, my land. Okay. I don't know why Howard chose to do this and go after poor Mr. Kunto. I have no idea why, but he decided to, right? What would have been the easiest way of fixing this? Anyone want to take a guess? What the easiest? Yeah.
They were just offered the same deal with Mr. Kunto.
Yes, exactly. Why didn't Howard say, give me lot A and then you keep your house? I mean, if all these 50-foot lots were effectively equal, right? This was empty, right? Why didn't Howard just swap for A? And that would have made the entire block line up. I don't know, right? These are these cases where, like you did Pierce v. Post your first week of property, where this case wasn't about a fox. These guys hated each other, right? Pierce and Post were enemies, and they litigated this case all the way because they hated each other. I don't know what the history was here. All right. Okay, so then the question is, was Kunto able to obtain plot B through adverse possession? And that's Stephen? Okay. Well, first of all, how long, before we get there, how long was Mr. Kunto in this house? Personally, he was in there less than a year, right? What about the person before him? Yeah, forever, basically, right? Well, long past 10 years. So the question becomes, can you add one squatter to the next squatter, right? And Stephen, finish up. What's the answer to that question? Yes. And what do we call it when you have squatter A and squatter B and you combine their time? What do we call that? Tacking, right? It's not very tacky, but it's tacking, okay? And I have here, where is it? Okay, so this is actually the Texas code, which I show you from time to time, concerning tacking, right? So it says, and I think everyone can read that, to satisfy limitations period, adverse possession is not to continue the same person, right? You don't need one person for the entire 10 years. But there must be privity of estate between each holder and each successor. What's this privity of estate business? Is that Ben?
Yes.
Ben, what's privity of estate? What is this?
Well, it's my understanding it's one person to another, much like a lease. Successive interest.
Good. Well, let me ask you another question. What's privity? I'm sure you've seen this word in at least one or two of the other classes. Good. Yes. Okay. Privity, and you'll see this in many classes, property contracts, whatever, refers to a relationship between two parties. Two parties are in privity of contract, right? I sold you a car, right? We're in privity of contract. I sold you a piece of land. We're in privity of contract. In this case, is that Kristen? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's too small. Okay. Yes, Caitlin. Were they in privity in this case?
Wait, I'm sorry.
Were Mr. Kunto and the person who bought it from in privity? You sound uncertain.
I think they were.
How did Kunto get the property in the first place? Did he steal it?
No.
How did he get it? He bought it. So if A sells to B, are they in privity? Okay, so they're privity of estate. Okay. Let me ask another question. Is that Alex in the back? No, you're not Alex. Norma? Norma, let me ask you this question. What happens if instead of A selling it to B, let's say A abandoned it, right? Let's say the previous owner was living for 30 years, then he just died and disappeared, right? And we don't know what happened to him. And Kunz was like, woo, free house, right? And he walks in. Are they in privity? Why not? I'm sorry? It's not because the original A and B. A abandoned it and B just moved in. Exactly. There's no contract, right? For parties to be in privity, to meet that standard, there needs to be some sort of contractual relationship. Okay, and then, yes, sir?
So in that case, the statute of limitations would just restart when he
Goes back to 0. Let me ask this question. Is that Dominique? Yeah. Dominique, let me ask you this question. What happens if, you know, A was a really nice guy, and he said, no, Mr. Kunto, you're a nice guy. I'm going to give you to this for free. No money required because you're such a nice guy. Are they in privity? Why not? Oh, they draw up a consideration. They draw up a contract consideration. They have love and affection. Remember that one? You remember that one, right? No, you know, love and affection. It's a term, right? So I mean, often happens where, say, I don't know, we'll do a case later this year where grandparents leave a house or give a house to their child for love and affection for caring. So let's just say, let's pretend love and affection consideration. Just, are they in privity? You're right, right? There doesn't need to be money transferred, right? Any sort of contractual relationship will suffice. Okay, Josh, let me ask you a third hypo. Let's say A's living in his house, really nice, right? And then Kunto comes along, he's a jerk. He's like, scram, and he throws him out of his house. And for whatever reason, Kunto never tries to, I'm sorry, the original owner never tries to reclaim it, right? A's been living there, A's been squatting there for 20 years. He didn't actually own the land, we know that, but he was there for 20 years. And then Kunto says, scram, get out of here. Are they in privity?
No,
You sound uncertain.
I mean, I say no, because there's no owner. Owner is man back. You don't get it.
He never made a claim for it.
Why should the court say that?
No, you're not answering my question. A was a squatter, right? A didn't own his land. A was living there for 20 years. Kunto comes along and throws him out. Are they in privity? Can Kunto tack his year to that guy's 20 years? That's right. Why not? There's no contract. There's no relationship. So in other words, the only way that squatter A and squatter B can put their times together is if there's some sort of contractual relationship, privity, right? Even if there's no money involved, they just says, you know what? Like, I'll squat from years 1 through 5. You squat from years 5 through 10, and we'll call it a day, right? That's okay. That you can tack together the time. So if one guy goes years 1 through 5, the second guy goes 5 through 10, they got it. But if the first guy goes 1 through 5, and then Kunto throws him out, right? And then he goes for another 5 years, not enough. Yes, sir.
in a situation like that, is always squatter B that gets possession, or did you work out a joint adverse possession?
Oh, so let me ask you this question, right? Is that Ryan, I think?
Yes.
Ryan, let me ask you this question. Squatter A is there for, say, 5 years, right? And he's, you know, like, oh, 5 years to go, halfway there, right? And then B comes and throws him off, okay? A goes to the cops. I want reentry. Do the cops have to let A back onto the land? Who has the stronger claim? The guy who was there for 5 years or the guy who was there for 5 minutes?
I don't think either of them has a claim.
No, that's wrong. I want to say why that's absolutely wrong. So who has a superior claim?
Well, the first one.
The true owner, right?
Well, yes.
But between squatter A and squatter B, whose claim is stronger?
Squatter.
No, who was there longer?
I was gonna say, but what about like possession? Because now he's already basically.
But he threw him off. So this is the rub, right? Go back to Mr. Robinson. Theoretically, and this is purely theoretically, let's say Mr. Robinson actually stayed there for 2 or 3 years, and he had filed his paperwork, and the bank showed no interest in removing him. What if someone broke into Mr. Robinson's house? Can Mr. Robinson call the cops and say he's trespassing? Yes. What the deal about adverse possession is until the true owner asserts a superior claim, the squatter in holding has the best claim around. Of course, the true owner can come back. So remember he did last year in property, if you lose stuff, right? If you lose a ring. Remember this? Of course, the true owner always has the superior claim. But if someone drops a ring and I pick it up and I have it for all these years, and then you steal it from me, Yeah, I can call the cops and say, give it back to me. I have the better claim. I don't have the perfect or ideal, but I have the better claim. I saw a hand there.
Yeah, you answered it, but theoretically.
Good. That's always the ideal.
Yeah, right. Theoretically, I think another thing, you should think about this as functioning similar to lost in the site property.
Exactly, that's what it is.
Okay.
That's the exact doctrine. But instead of it being personal property or chattel, like a thing, it's a piece of land, right? So unless the true owner comes back during the requisite time period, the finder, the squatter A, has a superior claim.
So is there more proverbial proof to come through because of, I mean, the Anglo-Saxon like route to protect property above all else, like real property, that way it's so difficult to obtain it versus a ring where you just pick it up.
Well, I think more than anything else, property is about certainty, right? They don't like things floating around without an owner. So someone finds a piece of property, or someone finds a lost ring, it's better that someone holds on to it than no one has it. So you actually protect the stealer. You protect the squatter because he'd rather have the land with someone working on it. Like someone said last class, it's better for Robinson to sit there and house sit than the house go empty, vacant. Right? Yes, ma'am.
What about continuity? So does there a difference between the guy who's being kicked off waiting a year and then going to off versus going immediately? Because
Doesn't make you have if the limitation period is 3 years, then you'll take as much time as you want up until the 3rd year. And this is the issue with the second case with the painting that was stolen, right? She sat on it for decades. And the court basically said, once she realized the painting was stolen, I'm giving a head, right? She should have done something. And the fact she did nothing means she was probably going to lose. But we'll get to the Jersey case in a few minutes. So the first element, right? The tacking, right? The court said that's not a problem, right? Even though it was just a summer home and they only went through during the summer, that's how that land ought to be used. And even though person A had it for 20 years and person B had it for just 1, or whatever the numbers are, combined, they have it for enough time, you can tack it. They were in privity. I want to get that first part of the holding, right? So going back to our elements, the 3 elements we discussed for adverse possession, right, there was entry, he was living in the house, it was open, he was there was no secret about it. It was continuous for 10 years, okay? The difficulty, right, is the last element. And I said almost in every case, it's automatic, right? Because the mere fact that you're on the land is an indication that you're squatting on it, right? But here's the weird case. His house was here, but the land he thought he had was here. In other words, he was squatting on the wrong piece of land, right? He didn't even know which land he was squatting on. So is it possible to gain adverse possession when you're mistaken? Like this, right? So is that Mike? Who's Mike? Okay. Okay, I'm going to put you there, Sam, and you. Okay, Sam. Okay, very good. So Sam, let me ask you this question. How do you figure out the claim of right, this 4th element, when the person's on the wrong piece of land?
He's on the wrong piece of land, but in his mind, he thinks he's on the wrong piece of land in reliance on the original survey. So, even though he's on the wrong piece of land, he thinks he's on the wrong piece of land. So he's establishing the claim of right. He has card power, he has his deed. It's just for the wrong thing based on survey.
Okay, so Sam, let me ask you a follow-up question. Does the court here apply the color of the claim of right? By the way, don't confuse these. People always do it. Claim of right, color of title. I can't tell you how many exams people flip them around. Don't. It's very easy because they sound alike. C of R, right? So just say claim of right. So Sam, let me ask this question. Does the court, the Washington court in this case, construe claim of right very strictly, very narrowly?
They do, but it doesn't.
I don't think they do.
No, they couldn't. If they did,
Yeah, so if they didn't construe it strictly, how'd they construe it? Yeah, the court says something like, you know, this is not like mathematical, right? they basically say, we don't need to construe this doctrine so strictly, right? The fact is he was squatting, he thought he was squatting on some piece of land. That's probably good enough. Remember I said 20 minutes ago that this fourth element almost doesn't exist anymore? This is why courts have basically just read it out of the law books, right? If someone can have a claim of right to land B when they think they're actually on land A, then this doctrine doesn't really mean anything anymore, right? As long as you're actually squatting on the land that your house is on, under this rule, you have a claim of right. Let me say that again. Under this case, even if you have no idea what the heck the survey is, right? You have no idea what land you want. Wherever your house is, and that's where you are, that's where your claim of right is. And then later the court can come back, kind of patch it up. Yeah.
So what if we could just, I guess, hold that Mr. McCall had gained the property through adverse possession, and therefore he would have had title and could have transferred it to Kunto's, which is not.
So was he a party in this case? Okay, so there's your answer, right? Generally, courts are in the business of awarding claims to people who aren't even present. So effect what's to happen is Mr. Kunto has to build based on the predecessor in interest, right? They can't just award it to someone who's not there. Because, for example, we don't have testimony at him, you know, whether he was actually continuously there or, you know, whatever. So they have to give it to the person before them. All right, so everyone see this case. So the first part of this case is about the continuity, which involves the tacking. I think that part, you know, is easy enough to understand. Person A sells to person B. They're in privity. You can tack to the requisite period. The second part, which is a little more complicated, the claim of right, basically boils down to the fact that it doesn't matter, right? If the person was on B, even though we thought it was A, it's good enough to have a claim of right. Yes, ma'am.
So now that he can have B, does he also now have A because the B builds A? So there's both ways?
All right, right. So here's what's not in the case. I'm very glad. Is that Jessica? No. Marisol, I think. I'm still figuring it out. Okay. I'm very glad you asked that, right? So Howard got screwed, didn't he? Because he paid for lot B. And the court said, oh, no. Moyer never owned it in the first place. So he couldn't sell it to you, right? So think about what happens. It's like a domino effect, right? Howard basically gave his land to Moyer. And Moyer said, okay, can I have this one? The court reverses that sale, right? So Howard basically gave up his land for nothing. I don't know what happened in this case. But if I had to guess, if Howard just didn't want to be a jerk, he would just take an A and been done with it, right? But because Moyer never had it in the first place, he couldn't sell it to Howard. And because Howard couldn't sell it, it effectively always belonged to Kunto. Everyone see that? It's a good question. Because Moyer never had it, he can't sell it. This is one of the violent things about property. And I promise you, this will be an exam. I promise you. If someone sells property that they don't own, the court can go back and cancel that sale, right? If I sell you property that turns out I didn't actually own, that sale was void. It was a void sale. The court actually goes back retroactively and cancels out the sale. All right. Any questions about that case? Yes, sir.
If they void the sale, would it all be voided, including Howard?
Well, that was a different transaction now, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So probably not, because, well, all right. There's a C, D, E, F, and G on this block. So whatever land Howard thought he owned, he didn't, and the person on letter E owned it. Right? You see what I'm getting at? So this entire thing was a huge mess. So I think at the end, if I had to guess what happened, everyone just stayed where they were. And Howard probably just left out screwed. I don't know. But in the end, I mean, I'd have to imagine the court says, all right, everyone, you don't have to move your houses. Just stay where you are and we'll figure it out.
When you say if the purported sale of property that someone doesn't own, is it void automatically, or is it voidable?
Voidable. The court. I think I said the court can go back and then strike out the sale.
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll discuss this much more later, but this is one of the ways where courts can go back and cancel out sales. It's a violent doctrine because basically someone says you don't live there anymore. You have to move next door, even though their house already in, which makes no sense. Any other questions? Let's take a look at some of the questions on page 176, please. If you open your book, if this works. Yeah, always try to, if you can, work through the questions. I'll do some of them in class. Page 176. Okay. All right. Is that Ryan? Ryan, just start reading question number 1, please. I'll stop you when I'm ready.
In 2008, University of Blackacre, owned by O. In 2017, tells A to get out of here on ACD over. A feeling threatened leaves and B is possession. In 2010, he owns Blackacre.
Okay. So let's take this one step at a time, right? And let's pretend we have a 10-year limit. Make it easy, right? So Ryan, A enters a Blackacre in the year 2000, right? B comes along in 2007, 7 years in, says, get out. At that point, between A and B, who has a stronger claim? Exactly right. A feels threatened and leaves. Okay? So now comes 2010. Who owns Blackacre? That's right. Why is O still on Blackacre? Exactly. No one reached 10 years because there was no previous contract. They said, get out. Very good. All right, Ryan. Now, the better question, can O or A eject B? Let's start with O. Could O eject B?
Yes.
Could A eject B?
Yes.
Yes. Why is that yes?
Because he has a stronger claim.
Exactly right. Because he was there for 7 years, his claim is stronger. He was in prior possession. So A can eject B, as of course O, the original owner. This is based the question we did about 5 minutes ago, just a little bit more cleaner. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at question number 2. Is that Cameron?
Yes.
Cameron, read question 2, please.
In 1994, A enters adversely upon Blackacre, owned by O.
Okay.
In 1995, O dies.
Oh, sorry, stop there. Okay, so A enters in 1994. In what year will his adverse possession claim mature?
2000.
God, math. Law students hate math, right? Yeah, 2000. 1994 plus 10 is 2004. Very good. Okay, so we know he needs to wait until 2004 to get his adverse possession claim. Okay, so read the next sentence. In 1995.
In 1995, O dies, leaving a will that divides Blackacre to B for life, remainder to C.
Oh, you thought you'd never do this remainder stuff again, right? You bring back scars. This will be easy, I promise. It's not bad, right? So in 1995, Cameron, did O still own the land?
Yes, he did.
But is it guaranteed that he would own it the duration of his life?
I'm sorry, what guarantee?
O owned it for sure in 1995, right? But is it guaranteed that he would own it indefinitely?
No, not necessarily.
Why not?
Because the squatter.
The squatter. So basically what happens is, what year does O have to die to preserve his claim to the land, assuming he doesn't throw anyone out? You said a minute ago, what year will the average?
10 years, so 2005.
2004, yeah.
2000.
So when does O have to die to make sure that his heirs get it?
2000.
You're thinking way too hard.
Yeah.
No. If in 2004 O loses it, when would O have to die for his heirs to keep it? 2003, before. Everyone see that? If O dies in 2003, it goes as a remainder to C. Everyone see that? But, Cameron, what happens if he dies in 2005? Or 2010, like the question asks?
Well, he dies and he never even entered upon it, so it would go to C unless if C goes for it, he takes possession of it. But the squatter can come along if C doesn't do that.
Okay, good. So the fact of the matter is O died in 1995, right? He died in 1995. All right. B dies in 2010. This is a different hypothetical. So the hypothetical I asked you was what happens if O dies in 2004 or 2003? And you said that it's fine, right? Okay. What happens if O dies in 2005? It's not fine, right? What happens if O dies, where is it, in 1995? What happens to the clock, the adverse possession clock? It starts over. Everyone see this? So the example I gave a minute ago, which is a little bit different than this, is if O keeps living, he can count the entire 10 years against him, right? But in this one, once he dies, right, you reset the clock. So because he stuck around for 10 years from 1995, by 2005, 10 years happened, and A owns it. This one's still a little tricky. A owns it because you start the clock when B got in 2005. 1995, sorry. Everyone see that? Let's do, I'll skip number 3. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
And you're saying that A can go back and gives a prayer right to it and kick out B.
Yeah.
Would his start over then again? You have to stay there 10 years from then, or can you tack on the 7 years if they gave him the right?
Say your question one more time. I think I got it. I'm not
He
sure.
was there for 7 years.
Okay.
And then was kicked off by B. If after 2 years he goes and kicks B out.
Okay, so I skipped, yeah. So that's basically the second paragraph. I was going to skip it because you asked. I'll do it for you. Okay, so is that Will?
Yes.
Will, read paragraph. Read paragraph number 2.
Suppose that in 2007, A leaves under the threat of force, but 6 months later, A recovers possession from B. If O does nothing, will A own Blackacre 10 years from the date of his entry in 2000?
Okay, so this is more or less your question, right? Which maybe where you got it from, but this is more or less your question. Let's think about it, right? He was there for 7 years. He's forced out. He comes back 6 years later. So the question that Will asks is this: do you start from scratch? You start from 0, or do you start from 7 and just you have a 6-month break and then you wait more? The answer is actually somewhat divided. So the certain answer is you don't go back to 0, right? You don't go back to 0 because the law says if you were forced out, the break was not your fault, and actually reward the person, right? So the interesting question is, do you only have to wait 10 years, or do you have to wait 10 years and 6 months? In other words, they basically credit you for your 7 years, but do you go 10 years total, or do they credit you for the 6 months? There's actually a split of authorities, right? The majority view basically says you wait 10 years and 6 months. That you basically say for the full 10 years, and the 6 months you're out of the land gets put aside. The minority view says 10 years even. Because if you lose it under threat of possession, you should not be punished. It's kind of a weird rule, but it's more of a fairness doctrine, which is why you should skip it, because it doesn't really have much sense, but it's about fairness.
The majority rule says that he would have to come back in
10 years and 6 months.
Another three years after that 6 months is over.
Exactly.
Versus 2.5 years.
Exa-
Just finishing out the 10 years.
Exactly right. Yes, sir.
I want to go back to number 2 and just kind of run a couple different
Okay.
scenarios. So A gets in 2000 or 1994. Nobody does anything until 2000 or after 2004. Later,
Mhm.
it's A's.
If as long as the question states here, O dies in 95.
If he dies in 1994,
Right, yes.
so it stays with that.
Yes.
But then if 10 years pass after his death, then nobody's come to claim it. It's A's.
That's exactly right.
If and the same in 2003 that we were talking about.
Yeah, the only tweak was in my initial hypothetical, O didn't die. That's why I said stop. Because I wanted to spell it out a little differently.
Okay, so if he lives past 2004,
And he doesn't
It's
eject
A's.
him, that's too bad. Yes, Ryan.
My question is along that line is, O lives till, say, 2003, so he's 9 years into his adverse possession, and then he dies, does it start over? Okay.
Yes. Yes, exactly right. So say O had lived till 2003, right? And then he died, you restart the clock.
Anytime between those 10 years if he does.
Right. That's why I said stop, right? Because I want to spell it out. But you don't tack the owners, right? And the reason why makes sense, right? Think about it like this. If I'm squatting against Grandpa for 9 years, and Grandpa's old, doesn't know what the heck's going on, right? Grandpa dies in 9th year. And then all of a sudden the son comes in and is like, what the heck's going on? Who's this guy? Maybe it'll take me more than a year to reject him. Give me my 10 years, right? Give me my full period that I can use to reject this person. So the squatter wants the person who owns it to live as long as possible, because when there's a death, it restarts the clock, because it's unfair to hold, grandson to the 1 year standard when Grandpa wasted it for 9. Yes, sir. That's is that Spencer?
Yes, so to answer that question, number 2 is that C owns the property, because when O died, the property started, and when E died, the property started.
No. But in 2010, right? By 2010, A had been there for 10 years. So if neither B nor C ever tried to eject him, right? Had B or C tried to eject him during the 10 years, it would have been fine. But because he never ejected him, A got it.
So
Under this question as
O
written.
dies in 1995, it starts over, A gets in 2005.
Exactly right. And by the way, in case you want to know, as the remainderman, C could eject the squatter. This doesn't come up a lot, but as a remainderman, C actually has an interest to eject the squatter, because she has a future interest. You probably never want to hear that word again, right? But C has a future interest, and based on that, she could eject the squatter.
Future interest and true owner, reject, never.
Yes, sir. Whenever I say future interest in property 2, I get these horrible, like, oh my God, no, never again. There's no rule against perpetuities, I promise. I will not mention it. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on these? Try and work these out. They're pretty good questions. If you know the answer, come to class, you can ask me, but try to work them out on your own. They're pretty good. All right, let's talk about the next topic, which is disabilities. Okay? And I kind of hinted at it before. So what if, you are squatting on a piece of land and the owner is in a coma? This is my exam question like 3 years ago. The owner is in a persistent vegetative state. Can he possibly know? Oh, where was I up to? Yes. So is that Kaler? Kaler. So the owner of the land's in a coma, doesn't know what the heck's going on. Someone's squatting on his land. Can we expect him to take any actions to eject if he's in a coma? Why not? Yeah, it's obvious, right? The entire thing about open and notorious is that the person who owns it needs to be able to know there's a squatter. And if the person's in some sort of coma or persistent vegetative state or whatever, we can't expect this of him, right? So this is what's called a disability. And this isn't just about property, but in many respects, and this is actually the Texas section 16.001, in many respects, when a person's under a disability, we don't expect them to have any sort of legal duties. And you already studied one in contracts, right? What's the most obvious one? Is that Paul? What's the most obvious disability that I'm sure you studied in contracts the first month or two? Even easier. You were one until a couple years ago. Minor, yeah. If you're under the age of 18, you can't contract, right? You don't have capacity. You don't think about it, but for law's sake, you're disabled, right? You're not a handicap, but legally you're disabled. So in Texas, as in just about every state, if you're under a certain age, you are disabled and you cannot expect to make contracts. As well, if say you're a minor and you own a piece of land, and by the way, you remember this from last year, you can even leave land to a person in utero. You can leave land to a person that's unborn. So if you're 3 years old and you own a piece of land and someone's squatting on it, you can't be expected to know about it. Okay? And you said the other one, unsound mind. That's exactly right. If you're unsound mind, you're disabled. Yes, sir.
In that case, if you own a piece of land and you're 3 years old and someone's squatting, does the statutory period start when you turn?
We'll do that in about 3 seconds, like really, really soon. Okay, so everyone get these things. Interestingly enough, other states have many more categories of disabilities. Like some states have, if you're in the military and you're overseas, you're treated disabled because you can't manage your affairs. Some states have if you're in prison. You can't eject someone from your land if you're in jail. Texas has a very cramped definition of disabled, which is, I guess, fitting. So, Marcella, lead. Can you read letter B, please? Okay, so I'll ask you the question that Josh posed to me a second ago. Josh's question. So let's say, Maricela, you're squatting on land owned by a 3-year-old. And let's pretend it's a 10-year limit, like in Texas. How long do you need to squat there to get up adverse possession? The kid's 3. Yes. Yes. What you have to do is wait till the person turns 18. So if you're squatting against a 3-year-old, you have to wait 15 years till they turn 18. And then you start the 10-year clock. You do not start the 10-year clock until the person is of the age of majority. And only when the person's of the age of majority do you start the 10-year clock. Okay, everyone see that? So let me ask another question, right? Jessica, let's say, for example, in the year 2015, what year we're in now, someone has a horrific car crash and they go into a coma. They're of unsound mind. And you say, yes, I got an idea. Let me start squatting on his land because he's in a coma. We won't even know any better, right? And let's say he's in a coma for 5 years. And then miraculously he wakes up. How long do you need to be in the land total to actually get it by adverse possession? 15. Why 15? Count it out. 5 years to disability. Okay, good. Yes, ma'am.
Did you not take into consideration of a legal guardian?
So the definition of legal disability, this presumes that a guardian has been appointed. Because if a guardian had been appointed, the person is no longer under the disability. That make sense?
Yeah.
Right. Not all minors have legal guardians. I mean, probably most of them do, but not everyone does. You can have a court-appointed guardian ad litem, whatever, but not all people have by definition. Yes, ma'am. Oh, that was my miracle. He was in the coma for 5 years and he woke up.
Sorry, okay.
That's okay. That's all right. Yes, it's a miracle, right? Yeah.
So if I understood her question right, you could squat on a disabled person's property if they have a legal guardian, and you can't do it without the.
If they have a legal guardian, then they would not be under a disability.
So then you could do
For the purpose of this class, whom known as a guardian. Easy? Good. That ends the conversation. People, but Dominic, your question was astute because if someone does have a disability, if someone has a guardian, they're not under a disability anymore because they've asked for someone managing their affairs. One at a time. But okay, there's a rule for court: always talk this way, never that way. The easy way to piss off a judge is talking the other side. Don't ever do it. Yes, ma'am. Beyond the scope of this class. We presume they do, but well beyond the scope of this class. I saw a hand over there-ish. All right. So is that let's see, Haley? Haley, read letter C for me, please. This is still the Texas statute. Okay. So what happens, and let's use this example, a child is, 3 years old, right? And you start squatting on his land. So we already said how long we have to wait for the 3-year-old child to get his land. How long would you have to squat for? 25, right? Now let me give you this example. What happens on the night before his 18th birthday, right? Kid starts driving drunk, right? Right before his 18th birthday. He gets into a car accident, goes into a coma. And he's then in a coma for 20 years. So basically he was a minor for 18 years, as most of us are. And then he goes into a terrible coma for another 20 years. Does the period of which he has a squat change. Why not? Exactly. You cannot tack one disability to the next. So the proverbial example is a teenager on his 18th birthday gets into a horrible car accident and goes into a coma. You only get one disability. What? It's harsh, right? But you only get one disability. You can't tack indefinitely. So if it's you start off with minority, you get up to 18 years. Or if you start off with someone who's in a coma and they're in a coma for the entire lives, then basically the clock never starts. Yeah.
So it would be that 25 years, not the additional, so it wouldn't be 45 years.
Nope, you can't go longer than 18 plus 10. So if you start off as a minor, it's 18 plus 10. That's the most you can get. But if the person, say, is mentally handicapped, it could be for the rest of their lives, you can never count it. One or two. Yeah, go.
When you say story, you mean whenever the squatter squatting?
Exactly. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask, what if I've been squatting for 9 years and 364 days, and the owner comes out to eject me, but
goes to a coma.
Unfortunate slip.
You never get to 10 years. You will never get to 10 years.
Even though he knew that I was squatting before.
For eternity, the statute of limitations will be stuck at 9 years, 364 days. Right, so make sure he doesn't slip. You'll be like, come back tomorrow. Okay, let's look at page 177. There's some questions there. On the next page. Okay, where was I up to? Is that Urvashi?
Yes.
Okay, read question number 1, please. Do you have the old book? You do. Yeah, unfortunately, I realized is they changed the numbers from the old book to the new book, and it makes absolutely no difference other than it's not 1984 anymore. I had to update all my page numbers and years this semester. So yeah, read the. It's up here if you don't have it as well.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Was in Spain in 1995, or died in Spain in 2008. Is on a no disability in 2008.
Okay, stop right there. By the way, it annoys me to no end when they update the book. Okay. Do you know how many cases changed from the last edition to this one? 2 that you'll cover. They swapped one case about New Jersey beaches for another, and there was a new Supreme Court case decided 2 years ago. That's it. It drives me nuts. It really does. And I actually I wanted to let you keep using the old one, but you know what the rub is? The bookstore won't sell the old book because they can't guarantee a full stock for all the students. So effectively, they stop selling the 7th edition and they make you buy the 8th edition for full list. So it drives me nuts to no ends. I have no control. But so I do have a slight victory though. So this was actually very good. So everyone see that you have this Casebook Connect deal? Do you want to actually buy the Casebook Connect version? Of course not. Sorry. You paid extra for it? Okay. So originally, about 2 years ago, Aspen announced this new Casebook Connect thing, right? But do you know how it originally worked? No one bought the book. The only option would be to rent it and use the online version like you did. So I blew the whistle on this. I made a big deal. And basically they had to change your entire business model because of this. Because I blogged it, I'm like, this is ridiculous. You're making people rent a property book. Effectively, you wouldn't even own your own book. You're required to give it back at the end of the semester, and this was the only option. There was no option to keep your own book. They said, oh, you can have the online version forever. Oh, who's going to use the online version, right? So after this, I actually spoke with their VP of like something. It's like, you know, you really screwed up our business plans. Like, okay. So because of this, you now have the option to either rent it or buy it. You're welcome. But this publisher really tried, and they did it very quietly. You have to actually read the fine print of their stupid thing to see that you actually return at the end of the year. Like, it wasn't even obvious. Anyway, you're welcome. So, so the second you said 1984, I was like, she has the old version, doesn't she? Yeah, I know. You're gonna have to check 2 or 3 cases, and you won't know which ones those are. So just check the other one. Yeah. So let's go back to this question, right? O is insane in 1995. O dies insane and attested in 2008. Okay, So, Rashi, the period from 1995 till 2008, did any time tick off during that period? Did any time during the squatting? And again, I think we skipped it, but A entered in 1995. So from 1995 through 2008, was there any time ticking?
No.
Why not?
Because he's disabled and
Okay, so when does a clock start ticking?
I think when his air takes over.
Good. So what year does the heir take over? 2008. So when will he get up after possession? Exactly right. He won't get till 2018. Okay. Take a look. Is that Rachel? Letter B, please. Right. So read letter B. Okay. So here's the deal. O dies in 2008, and his heir is only 6 years old. When will the 6-year-old reach the age of majority? Rachel? Oh, come on. If you're 6 in 2008, what year will you? 2020. Good. How does that affect adverse possession? Go back and read letter C. Read that? No, read it, please. So what happens if you start up with disabled grandpa and then leave it to minor grandson? Do you add both disabilities together? You only add one disability. So you start from 2008, you add 10 years, that's it. Even though the child is a minor, even though the heir is a minor, you don't add them together. You get one bite at the apple. Okay?
It's like 2 years before he can actually get the land, he gets screwed out of the land.
Something like that, yeah. All right, Aaron?
Yeah.
Aaron, take a look at number 2, please. Please read it.
O has no disability in 1995. O dies in testing in 2004. Their age is 2 years old in 2004.
Okay, what happens there?
So in 2004, when he dies, it restarts.
Wait a minute. What restarts?
His adverse possession.
Why does it restart?
Because he didn't make it before his new owner took over.
Okay, so you start counting 10 years in 1995. O dies. Okay? And then we start over.
And then he has to wait because the kid's only 2 years old.
Okay, good. All right, and let's take a look at number 3, please. Spencer, let's go with number 3.
O is 8 years old in 1995. In 2002, it becomes mentally ill. And O dies in testing in 2011. O's age is under no disability. Does the adverse possessor here acquire title in 2005, 2010, or some later date? The answer is 2005.
Okay, it's up there. Okay, so O is 8 years old in 1995. Okay, so at what point will he reach the age majority?
2 years. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
10 years.
10 years. So basically in 2005. So that's when the clock starts ticking. But in 2002 becomes mentally ill. Do we tack those two together? Okay, that's right. We do not tack together two different disabilities. We only start 10 years when you turn 18. Everyone get that?
So the clock starts in 05.
Yes, when he turns 18. Okay. A little tricky. Everyone get this? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
In the book, it says you can live within 5 years after federal living in Texas.
Oh, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm just doing the Texas one 10 years, but if it's 5 years, that's 5 years. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Could you have could they choose what disability to use?
Wow, that's
Like,
callous.
it's
Can you choose your disability? Man. I mean, it's whoever's first.
whatever's first.
Yeah. Oh, everyone asks, like, use the longer one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God, you're terrible. You're a horrible human being. No, everyone asks that question every year. It's a damnedest thing. You use the first disability in time. Okay. There's a brief discussion about adverse possession against the government, and generally speaking, you can't squat on public land. You can't sit in a park every day and take it. By the way, I don't know if anyone ever noticed this, but if you ever walk by Louisiana near like where the Shell building is, you ever see on the sidewalk these plaques saying something like "This is private property, no trespassing here"? You notice that? Why do you think those are there?
So that, I assume so that.
Do you think that's a public sidewalk or a private sidewalk?
I personally, when I first moved here, I thought it was a private sidewalk.
And you were right. Everyone, if you go down Louisiana, all the big buildings are, they're these really nice wide sidewalks that are very pretty. Those are not city streets, those are actually private sidewalks. Why do you think they put that sign there?
I initially just thought it was so they could pick up homeless people.
Close. So what happens if I cross, what happens if in Texas, every day for 10 years, I cross that section of Louisiana Street? Exactly. So I'll give you another example. In Rockefeller Center in New York City, 30 Rock, where they filmed the Today Show, every year for one day, they shut down Rockefeller Center. It's usually a Sunday in the summer when no one's there. Why do you think they do that? So they break up any continuous claims. Lest any, and in New York City, it's feasible for a person to basically live on the sidewalk of a Rockefeller Center. They shut it down for one day every year because it's a private sidewalk. Or even not just living there. What if someone crosses it every single day for a decade? I mean, in New York, that's, you know, it's feasible. And then someone says, oh, hey, you know, NBC, Comcast, Universal, whoever owns it now, right? I have a prescriptive easement to your land. And guess what? If you want to sell 30 Rock, you need my permission because I have a claim to it. I have a stick in the bundle. Okay, so they shut down the sidewalk one day a year. And in Louisiana, they just put up a plaque, which I guess is there. One other example. Has anyone ever noticed if someone has a beach house, you have to walk across their property to get there that says, I give you permission to walk across this? Why do you think they say they give you permission? It's not adverse. If you let someone cross over your land, you give them permission. It's not adverse. That's why you see these signs, right? You can cross my land to go to the beach. Well, they're required to let you go to the beach, but that's be permisory. Permission. Yes. Claim of right. See, you did it. Color of title, claim of right. You just did it. It eliminates your claim of right. Yep. Because it's permissive. If you let someone your land, there's no squatting. Any other questions? Okay, the last case we'll do a little bit quickly because the facts are somewhat convoluted and not too enjoyable. But the long and short of it is that Georgia O'Keeffe, and I have some pictures of her art, which usually resembles pieces of the female anatomy, to put it mildly. Her art was stolen many, many years ago. This is actually O'Keeffe. And for reasons we don't fully appreciate, she never actually called the police until significantly later. And we don't know how these paintings made it from her studio to New Jersey. Right? We have no idea. What we do know is that they were basically in New Jersey for at least some period of time. And we also know that the limitation period was 6 years. Okay? Where was I up to? Dagny, let me ask you this question. Dagny, why do you think the rules regarding adverse possession for chattel, personal property, may be slightly different than the rule for land? Much easier, right? Why do you think the rules for adverse possession may be different for a chattel, like a picture, right, versus a house and a piece of land? What's the biggest difference between those two? Yes, right? It's very easy to see if someone's squatting on your land, right? We know Mr. Robinson's in the house, right? It's open. It's in the public. It's a piece of land. Someone's there. But with a painting that hangs to some guy's wall, Dagny, is it obvious that it's there? Yeah, and unless he puts it on show somewhere on display, you're never going to know. You're never going to know where it is. In fact, the only reason why this guy got busted was he put on display somewhere. It was like, oh, that painting, right? So the court discussed something called a discovery rule. Is that Yoli? Yoli, what's this discovery rule business? I'm sure you've discussed this in other classes.
national law to enter the inventory discoveries, or that excessive reason or intelligence should have discovered. Acts which form the basis of
In your own words. When you read, I'm going to say in your own words, so don't read. No, not in the book, in your words. Okay. Well, I guess those are your words, if you wrote them. How would you what was a discovery rule? So usually, when does a clock start? And we discussed before. Usually in adverse possession, when does the clock start? What signifies starting the clock? Entry. Right, yeah. I mean, we have 4 elements. The reason why entry is important is because it starts the clock. But with the painting, when do we start the clock, Yoli? Well, that's how the court addresses it. But generally speaking, when do you think the clock should start? When it's stolen. Everyone see this? When it's stolen. So remember what I said about the New Jersey Supreme Court? Let's see, Eduardo, what did I say about the New Jersey Supreme Court? What do they always do? Exactly. So whatever the common law rule was, so in this case, the common rule was you start the clock when the thing's stolen. Eduardo, without reading that one page of the case, what will the New Jersey Supreme Court do to that rule? The opposite, right? I swear, we do 3 or 4 Jersey cases here, they always reverse the common law rule without fail. It's the sun rises in the east, New Jersey Supreme Court reverses common law. It happens every day. So, Eduardo, instead of starting the clock when the thing's stolen, when do they start the clock?
When she started
Right. Effectively, you start the clock, and this is what Yoli said a minute ago, when she knew or should have known that the paintings were being held somewhere. Right? And this is a very fuzzy standard, right? It's when she knew or should have known that paintings are being held somewhere. Now, why does this not really make a lot of sense, Chris? What doesn't make sense about this standard? A lot of things don't, but what particularly doesn't make sense? Yeah. So why do we start the clock in the 1940s when everything was stolen? Why?
Because when they had this new standard, because he was actively seeking them.
Oh, but she was not actively seeking them, right?
Right.
When did she actually start actively seeking it? Yeah, I don't know the exact year. In the 70s, right? So effectively, under the common law rule, if someone steals your stuff, you have 6 years under the New Jersey law to find it. But the Supreme Court says, no. It's when you knew or should have known it was missing, right? If you hear, oh, wait a minute, it's hanging in this gallery in New Jersey somewhere, right? That's when you start looking for it. Does this rule make much sense, Alex? Why do you think they have this rule? What do you think was motivating the Jersey Supreme Court here?
Probably have the rule to encourage them to start looking right away.
Does this rule do that?
Yeah.
What does this rule do?
Gives them all the time to look, gives them time to just.
Doesn't this rule kind of, Alex? Doesn't this rule kind of like reward laziness? Yeah, doesn't it? Right. This rule basically rewards Miss O'Keefe, who sat on her claim for like 4 decades, or 3 decades, whatever it was. But what's the upside, Ryan, to this rule? Exactly. So what the majority says is like this. This adverse possession rule doesn't make much sense for personal property because it can be hidden so easily, right? You can put this thing on a wall in your study and you'll never see it again for 6 decades, let alone 6 years. So they imposed this rule saying that you should start the clock when you know or should have known it's being held somewhere. Yeah?
That's how you should have known way before.
Well, should have known what, though? See, that's the rub, right? She obviously knew it was not in her studio, but she wouldn't know where to go look or who to sue. The question is, if she knew it's somewhere in New Jersey, in some gallery in New Jersey, it's a specific knowledge. In other words, under this rule, you'd have 6 years from where you learn that basically some dealer in New Jersey had it. Maybe not the exact location, but you know it's somewhere. Good. That was my next point. What about these efforts, right?
So they have to at least, they had the art association.
Good. Right. So the court, okay, so by the way, the New Jersey Supreme Court does a lot of funky things, right? So the first thing it said was, you know, here's the standard what it should be. Okay. And then let's go make up this entire new thing, this entire new art registry that doesn't exist but should exist, right? They were talking to the art industry because they had this big case, like, let's tell everyone else how to do things. So they said, let's say you can only use this finder rule if you were diligent, right? You actually took efforts to register your art as missing, right? If you registered your art as missing, that was enough to put the clock on hold. In other words, you don't automatically get to put the clock on hold for 60 years. You only get to put the clock on hold if you take reasonable steps to exercise your diligence. That makes sense. All right. So questions on this case? Anything in your mind? Yes, sir.
I recently watched a movie called Woman in Gold. And
I saw that too. Yeah. Anyone else see that movie? The book was better, but not that good. By the way, so the Supreme Court scene in this movie was terrible. Oh my God. So there's a, I'll briefly discuss the premise of this movie. The premise of this movie is that there was a painting that was owned by a prominent Jewish family in Austria. And due to a series of weird exchanges, the Austrian Museum takes it after World War II. The Nazis basically seized it. And the entire case was about a Supreme Court decision whether the heir, a woman in California, could sue the Republic of Austria. And the Supreme Court, I wrote an entire post on this. The Supreme Court scene in this movie is probably the worst Supreme Court scene ever. So let me show you this picture. Okay, that's Chief Justice Rehnquist, okay? I think that's Justice Kennedy and Thomas. For some reason, Justice Breyer has a fan next to him, okay? There is no fan at the Supreme Court. Okay, and I got the token, yeah. And that's just O'Connor. It was terrible. Anyway, I'll play the clip in a second, but go ahead, ask your question.
Well, so the movie ends with like, I don't know, 90% of stolen art has gone out of claim.
Yeah.
Or like hasn't been returned to its original owner. So how did, with the statute of limitations, if you know it's in an Austrian or German or Polish or wherever art museum.
Well, you wouldn't be claiming under adverse possession, though. You'd be claiming it. You'd be claiming it that it's yours, that you're the rightful owner. All right, we have a minute left. I'll play the clip. It's terrible. Oh, it was so bad.
We're very sensitive to the government's concerns, Mr. Chief Justice. The can of worms argument. But each country is different and imposes different conditions. Unlike, say, Cuba, in Austria's case, there's a...
Actually, I had them install this last time. I didn't have it from Mr. Robinson's video. It's a 50-second clip. It's short. It's so bad. I actually started screaming in the theater when I saw this. I'm not joking. Forget it. It doesn't work.
There's a treaty, so there's no dispute as to what type of law could apply. We recommend opening the can and extracting just the one little worm with a...
Of course, this one. Anyway, that's the clip. It's terrible. He makes a very bad argument. They basically paraphrase the Supreme Court argument. Ryan Reynolds was just bad movie. All right. Any questions not about this terrible movie? Yeah, it's so bad. The book was slightly better, not much. Yes, last question?
Why did they include this last little portion of their
I didn't assign it. That's why I didn't assign it. Any other questions? All right, I'll see all of you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Sorry, just to